This is Lady Boule, and I hope you are having a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Please hit the notification bell so you'll know when new videos are being uploaded. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. I want to send a special shout out to those who commented on the last video on the Boule. I got a lot of feedback, a lot of challenges, and suggestions. So I've put my email address in the description box and in the comments section. I keep forgetting to do this, but I'm going to do it this time. I'd like to know your thoughts and ideas for future videos. The African American culture is so exciting and interesting. There's always something to talk about. So I would like to know what you're interested in, because chances are I'll be interested in it too. And if I don't know anything about it, I will find out. So let me know what you think. And I am very appreciative of all of your ideas. Even if we don't agree, I still want to know what you think. And thanks again for your support. In that video, several of you brought to my attention the name Steve Coakley. I will admit that I'm not really familiar with his work, but since you brought it up and it seemed important, I did go and look him up and did some research, listened to some of his videos, and read his expose on the Boule. I will say that his information is engaging. Some of it I'd heard before, but some of it was, quite frankly, new. I understand he's passed away, so I want to share my views on his work in as respectful a manner as possible, because we do agree on some things, but there are some differing opinions. My opinions differ from his in some ways, but the facts are the facts, and we agree on the facts. For my own validation, I will say that I am familiar with the works of Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, Dr. Anthony Browder, and Professor James Small, to name a few. So I'm aware that civilization began along the Nile River, which is in Africa. At every opportunity, I think African and African-descended people should always remind the world that Egypt and the Nile River are both in Africa. The Nile River does not begin in Egypt. The Nile River begins around Tanzania and Uganda at Lake Victoria, and it flows upward. It flows north. Most rivers flow south, but the Nile flows north. Ancient Kemet had a long history of invaders coming to make war against them. And between 639 and 646 of the Common Era, Arabs came in and made war against them, and they are the ones that are there now. They are controlling ancient Kemet, which they call Egypt. I offer that information because when we say that civilization began along the Nile, we're talking about the entire region, not just Egypt. And I say that because it's important that we remember that black people lived along the Nile in ancient times, just as they do today. The point for this is to say that if civilization began along the Nile, then the components of civilization also began along the Nile, and that region is called the Nile River Valley. So civilization began in Africa along the Nile River Valley. In this case, civilization, and I mean all of it, began along the Nile. Nile River Valley countries are Burundi, Tanzania, Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kenya, Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. This is the Nile River Valley, the birthplace of civilization. There are 7 components of civilization, and I'm just going to go over them, and I am getting somewhere with this, so just stick with me for a moment. The 7 components of civilization are social structure and family life, science and technology, economy and trade, religion, arts and education, geography and agriculture, and government and leaders. Now, family structure, family life, there are those who would have us to think that came out of Europe. That did not. That came out of ancient Kemet. The foundation of civilization was laid in ancient Kemet. The reason I point this out is because economy and trade, which was the second component of civilization, brings other people to your region. In this case, trade brought everybody to ancient Kemet: Greeks, Arabs, Berbers, Indians, everybody. The Greeks patterned their society after the Kemetics, whom they greatly respected. The Romans patterned their society after the Greeks, and the British patterned theirs after both. So the Nile River Valley is where world civilization came from. Now, I said all of that to say that when we start talking about Greek societies, we really are talking about a culture that was borrowed or stolen from Africans, in this case, ancient Kemet. So I want to underscore the fact that black people don't have to steal anything from anybody, because all of it came from the same source that we came from. And since we African Americans were stripped of everything, including name, language, and tribe, we have a right to take anything off the buffet that we want. Now, for Mr. Steve Coakley, he was born June 17th, 1952, and died April 11th, 2012. He was an American political researcher and lecturer who lectured nationally on political and economic issues relating especially to the African American community. So he was concerned about the African American community and imparting information that would be helpful. I didn't find any information on his educational background, but he was assistant to the special committee on the rules under Mayor Harold Washington in Chicago. So he must have had some kind of an educational background for him to have that kind of position. He lectured, he gave over 5,000 lectures, but he was interested in the Black Panthers, Marcus Garvey, the Rothschilds, and the Boule. And that is where I have spent my time trying to understand his position on the Boule. He seems to have had a real disdain for the men of the Boule. However, he really did not present enough evidence for me to convince me that they were doing anything illegal, unethical maybe in his mind, but there was little proof or no proof that they had done anything other than that they were involved in an organization that he said was trying to protect white supremacy. And that, to me, is an allegation that really was not proven. But I will point out some things that I do agree with him on. I will also point out some things that I found disturbing, and I will share some things that I just didn't agree with. So here are some points where I do agree with Mr. Coakley. Number one, the Boule actually does mean advisor to the king. So he's right about that. Number two, I agree that white supremacy rules this present world, and many black people are either complicit or in agreement with that rule, because otherwise we wouldn't be in the shape that we're in. I agree that there are satanic forces in the world, and that weak-minded, selfish, and greedy people can be persuaded to do unconscionable things to other people, even friends, and maybe even family members. I agree that there are many professional black men in the Boule or other fraternities, but that is a very small number of black American men. I agree that there are gatekeepers in all communities. However, most of them are not in fraternities or sororities. Government officials, including the mayor, the city council, law enforcement, and boards of directors, people like that are the true gatekeepers. I agree that the Rothschilds seem to have a lot of power in the world, and nobody knows how they got it or how to take it away from them. I agree that most of the men Mr. Coakley reports to be in the Boule are, in fact, in the Boule. I can believe, so I agree with him, that Dr. Du Bois and the light-skinned mulattoes of the day didn't agree with or like African-featured Marcus Garvey. Finally, I agree that there's all kinds of trickery and chicanery going on in the world. There are things we can see and things we can't see. But unless you can use this information in a way that it helps rather than making everybody suspicious of each other, it's useless information. But those are the areas where I do agree with Mr. Coakley. Now, there are three areas of the information that I actually read or listened to. There are three areas that I just found disturbing. The first one was accusing Reverend Jesse Jackson of being involved in Dr. King's assassination. This was a shocker for me. I hadn't heard that before. And since I hadn't heard it before and I just wasn't ready for that, it's just too difficult an allegation for me to process. So I found that disturbing. Another one was that at one point in one of the articles, there was this statement. It said, in the words of Mr. Coakley, when we look at the Boule closely, we find a confusion of values. Black men who felt that their advancement was edged upon a positive relationship with wealthy and influential white people. And I say that may have an adverse impact on our revolution. Now, the word revolution is a red herring for me. It suggests that somebody is operating on his own agenda, and it could be, putting deceptive information in the general public. So that was disturbing. And maybe somebody or at some point I will be able to get that cleared up, because that disturbed me when he said it was interfering with the revolution, because that seems like somebody has their own agenda. And the third thing, and it's kind of petty sort of, but I still, it was just something that didn't work for me. Making the symbols of fraternities and sororities into something sinister. I believe I'm right when I say that the average black Greek learns those symbols and then forgets them. This article makes it seem like black members of fraternities and sororities live and breathe those organizations. I don't believe that to be true, and I know it's not true in my case. Many young people join these organizations in college and lose interest in them once they graduate. That is definitely a fact. The fraternity or sorority on a college campus is a way of raising your profile, bonding with other students in friendship, wearing the letters, the paraphernalia. Everybody likes strutting around with those letters on, and stepping and strolling. Now, that's what they do it for in college. Most of them, I'm going to say most, don't even think about it after they leave college. I don't speak for everybody. But for me, the idea that black people are using sororities and fraternities to control other black people is simply absurd. I also have some points of contention about Mr. Coakley's work. Mr. Coakley's work contains mythology and confusing numerology to explain events after they've happened. For instance, using Dr. King's room number at the Lorraine Hotel 306 and making it equal 666 to indicate he was going to be killed. Now, this would have been great if somebody had recognized that and done something about it before he was killed. But even if it's true, it does no good after the fact. This numerology where you're throwing out numbers to mean something, he does that quite a bit. It's like claiming Notre Dame has predicted everything, but you only recognized it after it happens. This is helpful only in advancing a conspiracy. He also uses old-timey sayings like, if you're white, you're all right. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back, to explain the mentality of those light-skinned Boule members. That's oversimplifying things in my mind. And then he was using Ebony and Essence and Black Enterprise, Black magazines to say that white companies were controlling them through their advertising dollars. And that's true for any company, whether it's a black company or not. If you're going to put your money and your product in somebody's magazine, you want to have some control over what that magazine stands for and what that magazine represents to a community of people. The reality to me is that Ebony fulfilled a need for black people. Black people wanted to see the things in Ebony. In its heyday, Ebony was great. Black people didn't have a problem with that. And Essence too, in both those magazines tackled controversial subjects because Lerone Bennett, who was the historian at Ebony, wrote some very scathing things about political figures in the United States back in the 70s and 80s. And I remember that because I read Ebony a lot. So I thought that was disingenuous. And now for my downright disagreements. I disagree that the Boule, fraternities, or sororities have enough influence in the black community to gatekeep. If any organization in the black community has any kind of influence, it's the church. The be-all, end-all in the black community is the church. The pastor in the church has the most power of anybody in the community. If pastor said it, it's a wrap. Souls to the polls is about black people going to church, from the church to the polls to vote, because pastor said we gotta go vote. In the South, they used to say you could buy a black preacher for $500. Now, I don't know what they're going for today, but the power in the black community, it ain't in no Boule, it's in the church. And I wouldn't be scared to bet that the barbershop is the next most powerful place for black men. They have more confidence in their barber than they have in their frat brother. I wouldn't be scared to bet that. I disagree that the Boule had anything to do with Marcus Garvey being run out of the United States. Marcus Garvey was talking about black people going back to Africa in the 19-teens and the 1920s. This was in the heat of Jim Crow. The American economy, especially the Southern agricultural economy, was almost totally dependent on black labor. To even hint that 1 million black people would be going anywhere, Africa or anywhere else, would have devastated the American economy. So there is no way that the government would have depended on 6 little old black men to run Marcus Garvey out of here. They ran him out of here like they do everything else. And furthermore, there is no indication that 1 million black people would go back. It's almost ridiculous that 1 million black people would go back to Africa. Even, in the 1920s, black people weren't even thinking about going back to Africa. And I base this on the fact that it was during and right after the Civil War, the government, Abraham Lincoln and his minions, wanted to run black people out of here, wanted to send them to the Dominican Republic. The black leaders, including Frederick Douglass, went to Abraham Lincoln and told him that we weren't going anywhere. They told him we built this country and we're not leaving. So really going back to Africa was a non-starter. Lastly, I disagree that black Americans are so naive that we don't know that there are forces behind very successful people in the United States. We've been saying forever that Negro is bought and paid for. We've always known that. There have always been sellouts. We know about that. But there is really no reason to make a big noise about it because they don't immediately affect our lives. Because black people can make it work. We are resourceful, industrious people. And nobody can really hold you back when you got the wind at your back that we call the Holy Spirit. And I still believe in that regardless to what anybody says. So what is the strain between the Boule and the African American community? In my opinion, there really should not be one. I do not believe the Boule is the elitist organization that it started out being. I think there are very successful men in the Boule, and there are very successful men not in the Boule. And I believe that the Boule has sort of reformed itself so that it does have a more positive image in the community because they really are trying. They are becoming and have become a service organization like the rest of the Black Greek organizations. I encourage people to get to know more about these organizations. And if you don't want to join one, learn more about them because there's really no reason for us to be having friction about somebody being in an organization. Who cares? I mean, if you don't want to be in an organization, that's not a big deal. So let's not look for reasons to be mad at each other and look down on each other and criticize each other. Let's open your own mind and heart. You might want to join an organization. You never know. And if you don't, your children will. The very people, and I know this for myself, the very people who say, I don't like those black sororities and the black fraternities, and they think they're better. Sometimes it happens that you'll go to a meeting and you'll look at the new prospects, and the very person that said they didn't want to be in the sorority will be sitting up in there trying to join. Trust me on this. So I enjoyed doing this video, and I am going to put my email address in the comment section. So if you want to suggest a video for me to discuss, I would love to do it, or do another reaction video. This was really fun. I didn't think I could do it. I didn't feel comfortable doing it, but it turned out just fine. Thanks for making the suggestion. So my friends, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Please hit the notification bell so you'll know when the videos are uploaded. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and for sharing the videos. And as always, have a great day.